Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
I thought I had a wife, a partner, a mother to my children, but I was wrong. The woman I loved turned my home into a battleground. She brought him into my life, into my house. Gordon Smith, the man she called a real man. She told me to watch as he destroyed everything I'd built, every laugh my children shared, every memory we made, crushed under his arrogance and her betrayal. I was a husband, but to her, I was nothing, just a shadow. And when I tried to fight back, I wasn't just beaten, I was erased. But I swear I won't disappear quietly. Where do I start? That's a good question. Should I begin with my childhood without my parents? Or when I moved in with my aunt, uncle, and cousin after my parents passed away? Maybe I could talk about my time in the Army or my job with Red River Private Security afterward. I could even mention getting married, only for my wife to say she wanted a divorce a little over a year later. I can start at any of those moments. Let me give you a brief look at my life before I became an equalizer. What's an equalizer, you ask? I'll explain that later. I was born in New York City, where my mom and dad lived. My first 6 years were pretty normal, but then things changed in a way I wouldn't wish on any child. When I was 6, my parents were in a plane crash. After that, I moved to California to live with my Uncle John, Aunt Naomi, and Cousin Kara. At that time, Uncle John was stationed at Fort Irwin. Life didn't feel normal anymore, and I missed my parents a lot. But Uncle John and Aunt Naomi did their best to show me love, even while they were dealing with their own sadness over my parents' loss. John Shepard is my father's brother. He and Aunt Naomi married around the same time as my parents. I faintly remember my parents saying that if anything happened to them, I would live with John and Naomi, my godparents. At 6, I didn't remember much about my parents. I thought about why my new guardians were my aunt and uncle, but eventually I accepted it. They were very affected by my parents' passing, but always treated me like their own son. Cousin Kara became more like a sister to me, and Naomi felt like my mom while John felt like my dad. I never wondered why John was white and Naomi was black. In fact, that little detail shaped my views as I got older. My name is Declan Shepard, but I've been called Deck my whole life. I'm 33 years old, 6 feet 1 inch tall, weigh 205 pounds, and I stay fit. I keep my black hair, which is getting some gray, cut short, just like in the Army. Many people I've dated say I'm handsome. My bright blue eyes, along with my nose that has been broken before, add some character to my face. I got into my share of fights growing up. Some were because I was the new kid at school, as Uncle John's Army career meant we moved quite a bit. Others were because I was in a mixed-race family, especially when we lived in Columbus, Georgia. When we moved to Santa Barbara, California, after John retired and Kara and I started high school, we felt very much like siblings. We loved each other and fought just as much. We were the typical siblings, with rivalries and all. I still dated some of Kara's cheerleader friends, though. After high school, I joined the Army and went back to Fort Benning, where I had spent some of my childhood. This time, I was there for basic training and advanced individual training. I completed my 4-year service and was sent to Afghanistan in early 2002 as part of an Alpha team led by Captain Drake. I faced situations there that shocked me. Some experiences were so remarkable that you wouldn't believe me. Trust me on that. When I reported to Fort Jackson to finish my time there, I got recruited while waiting at a bus stop for a ride to the airport. The Red River Private Security firm had found my background and decided I would fit their needs. They offered a salary 5 times what I earned as a sergeant, so I happily accepted. After 6 months in Afghanistan and a short trip to Israel, I thought whatever Red River assigned me would be much easier. While I was with Red River, I met and married Cindy Ramirez, a lovely woman with a bright personality. She was originally from Puerto Rico, and her mother was black. I was really drawn to her. She felt the same way, and after a few months, we got married. However, that didn't last long. While we were together and I wasn't working, our bond was strong, but we didn't connect in other ways. Just over a year after we married, she asked for a divorce but wanted nothing in return. She told me she had feelings for someone else and thought it was best to end our marriage respectfully before starting something new. I felt somewhat relieved. I didn't truly love her. Our relationship was lively, but that was about all we had. Marriages based only on looks usually don't survive. After talking it over, we decided to separate without hard feelings, and the divorce went smoothly. Of course, I would miss our time together, but I was young, and many opportunities awaited me. So I moved on, having casual relationships when I wanted, without any long-term commitments. I often traveled for work, sometimes for months, so being married didn't make sense if I couldn't fully support a relationship. Plus, since I hadn't genuinely loved Cindy, I wanted to be sure that if I met someone special, she would be the right fit for me. I had been with Red River for a little over 4 years when my team received an order to destroy a dam along a river in Sierra Leone to place the blame on the rebels. The main issue was that there was a village downstream that would likely suffer if we went ahead with it. I refused the order and was reminded of the confidentiality agreement I had signed, which led to my departure from the team. My team felt the same way. None of them followed the instruction either. It was probably for the best. In my last year there, Red River was getting involved in more questionable things. I was already thinking about my future when this new operation showed up. Many people think private security now acts harshly against anyone who doesn't obey. But since new rules took place, it's mostly about paperwork and the law. If I talked to the media, I could face serious trouble. It wouldn't matter if the order was wrong. It would just be my word against theirs. So I went back to Santa Barbara for a bit, looking for a job, but I had little luck. Some people with shady intentions approached me, wanting support for their plans, but I politely said no. I had seen enough of that kind of life. My family had pulled away when I told them I worked for Red River after leaving the Army. But since I left that job and explained why, we started to mend our broken relationship. I moved to LA and took a part-time job as a doorman at a nightclub, which barely paid my bills. I still had some savings from Red River, but it was slowly running out. I needed to find a steady job soon. One Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in the Shamrock when I overheard a conversation that could change my life. I had just arrived at the bar and ordered a drink when what I heard from the table behind me caught my ear. "But you have to help me. I need proof that my wife is putting our kids in danger by bringing her boyfriend home. She says if I divorce her, she'll keep everything and won't let me see the kids." His voice mixed anger with a sense of urgency. I couldn't help but smile at my reflection in the mirror. At least Cindy and I never had kids, and she didn't have someone else in her life. At least not that I knew of. She always said she hadn't been unfaithful during our marriage. I saw that as a bit of luck because I realized I didn't truly love her. It was more like a crush. Now that I was older, I wanted to find someone to share my life with. Once I got a steady job. I looked at them in the mirror to see who was talking. The man seemed quite short. He was probably around 5-6 inches even on his tiptoes. He was losing his hair and wearing glasses. For some reason, accountant was the first word that came to mind. "Mr. Turner, I'm not sure what to suggest. If she doesn't bring her partner home when your children are there and doesn't act inappropriately in front of them, there's really no legal reason to deny her custody in a divorce." This is California, where wives and mothers often have the upper hand when it comes to dividing property and caring for children. I guess the man was either a private investigator or a lawyer. I leaned towards private investigator because he didn't look much like someone who handled legal matters. His cheap suit and the way he moved suggested that he was more of a streetwise type. "I'll pay you $50,000 to find anything that will help me show she is not a good mother," Turner said. That caught my attention. $50,000 is a good amount of money. "Mr. Turner, you said that she never brings her partner home when the kids are there. She sends them to a babysitter. That shows she isn't putting them in the middle of your issues," I replied. "It's not my issue, mister." "Stone, my wife is forcing this on me and I feel stuck," he shot back, his voice rising and causing heads to turn. I sighed. I've always felt for the underdogs. I dislike unfair treatment toward anyone who doesn't deserve it. It's just how I grew up. Besides, if I could get that $50,000, it would help because my savings were getting low. I began to think about my next steps. "I'm sorry, Mr. Turner. There isn't much I can do. You already know your wife has a partner, and even with proof, it will still be complicated during the divorce. Good luck to you. I can't stand it when people cheat and get away with it, but with all the understanding judges here, it's tough to prove she's unfit as a mother unless she does something wrong in front of the kids," Stone said as he stood to leave. Turner sat quietly, looking down while Stone placed his hand on his shoulder in a comforting way before walking out. That was my chance. I got up and took my drink to his table. "Mr. Turner?" I asked gently. He looked up at me. "Yes? Who are you?" he replied, clearly on guard as I caught him at a weak moment. "My name is Declan Shepard. I couldn't help but overhear your talk with the private investigator. I know you don't know me and might not trust me, but I think I can help you with your situation," I said, nodding. "Is it all right if I sit?" His expression changed to one of hope. "Please do, Mr. Shepard," he said, pointing to the empty chair. "Thank you," I smiled as I settled down. "So, I overheard that your wife has a partner. It seems she has put you in a tough spot, making it hard for you to leave without losing a lot. Am I right?" "Yes, that's about it," he admitted with a sigh. "But I don't see how you can help." "Not in the way you think," I acknowledged. "But I believe I can assist you, just not how you might expect." "What do you mean, Mr. Shepard?" "Shepard?" he asked, looking confused. "I can help you even things out. I can make it hard for your wife to do much when you want to separate. But I need to know more about her and her partner first. Tell me what you know about him," I said. Turner paused for a moment. "His name is Gordon Smith. He's even bigger than you. He has threatened me, saying that if I fight back at all, he will hurt me," he said, visibly shaken. But I could also see he was angry. My respect for him grew. I nodded. "Okay, size doesn't scare me. What does he look like?" "He's big and blonde, sort of like an action movie star. He has some stubble on his face," he explained. I pictured a strong man in my mind. "Do you know where he lives?" "About 2 miles from our house. I followed him once after he left. I can't confront him, though. As much as I want to, I wouldn't stand a chance. I tried once," he said, pulling out a pen and writing the address on a napkin. "Let's talk about your wife for a moment. How long have you been married?" 16 years. 15 of those were happy for me, at least. I thought she was happy, too, but then a year ago..." He trailed off, shaking his head. He finished writing and handed the napkin to me. I took it and looked at the address. "Does he have a family? A wife or kids?" "Not that I know of. He lives in a nice house in Beverly Hills, though," he said. "Okay, so it sounds like he might be alone. Can you tell me how this all started?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "About a year ago, everything changed. Candace, my wife, came home one day and said we needed to talk. I thought she was about to leave me, but she told me she would make things very difficult for me. I threatened to separate, and she said she would take the kids and leave me shattered if I did that. Then I had the idea to confront him the next time he came over. She said he would come by and wanted me to see how a real man handles things," he said, rolling his eyes. "I guess using a baseball bat didn't go as planned." I raised an eyebrow. I wanted to confront him, but my wife warned him, and he grabbed the bat from me. Then he pushed me, and that was the last time I tried to stand up to him. He said if I tried something like that again, he would really hurt me. Then he said that if I tried anything like that again, he would go even further, and that he and my wife would benefit from my life insurance. So this person was a bully who didn't seem to care about the law. I could definitely work with that. Knowing your opponent gives you an advantage. Sun Tzu had it right. I was determined to find out everything I could about him before I took action. I nodded and decided to ask about payment. "I heard you offer that PI $50K. I'll do it for that, and my plan won't involve hurting anyone. Does that sound good to you?" He nodded, his face brightening with hope. "Mr. Shepard, I can pay you half now, and half when it's done. Can you tell me how you plan to do it?" "It's better if you don't know," I said honestly. "Mr. Turner, trust me. The less you know, the safer we both will be." He looked like he wanted to ask again, but changed his mind. Wise choice. He took a deep sip from his beer and just nodded. I nodded back. "Great. Do you have a picture of your wife? I need to understand her a bit better." "Sure," he replied, taking out his wallet and showing me a photo. She was beautiful. I found myself wondering how he was with someone like her. In the picture, it was him, her, and their 2 kids, a boy and a girl. His son looked about 10 or 11, and the daughter looked around 13 or 14. Even after having kids, his wife looked good. She was tall, with dirty blonde hair, and had an air of confidence that suggested she thought she was in control. She seemed a bit self-centered, and I felt bad for the kids having her as a mother. Turner seemed to have a strong spirit beneath his calm appearance. Although he appeared overwhelmed with his situation, he was pushing back in the only way he could. After looking at the picture, I gave it back to him. "Thanks. Mr. Turner, are you okay with something happening to the man who's been making your life difficult?" I pretty much knew the answer, but I wanted to be sure. "None whatsoever," he replied quickly. Very smart man. "Good. I won't lie. This will take a few hours to get ready. Do you have your cell phone?" I asked, taking out my own phone. "Right here," he said, pulling his out. I got his number and shared mine. "All set," I said. "I'll text you a few hours before I go after him. Do you know when he's coming to your house next?" "Tomorrow night," he said with determination. "I wish I could just confront him." "That sounds tempting, but it's not the best choice," I replied. "He won't be eager to face your wife after I talk to him. I plan to make things a bit tough for him." "Also, can your wife or her lawyer trace the money you'll use to pay me?" I asked. "No. It's from a rainy day fund I set up a year ago when all this started," he said. "A friend of mine went through a divorce, and he shared some tips on how to protect my interests. He told me about an account that was set up abroad, just for me." "That sounds smart," I said, appreciating his insight. "Mr. Turner, what time is Gordon supposed to come by tomorrow evening? I wanted to catch him off guard before he left home." "I'm not sure, but she said I need to take the kids to the sitter around 6 p.m. I smiled. "That's helpful to know. When you get home from work, try breaking your key in the ignition. Pull it out halfway, then pull it back sharply so it breaks clean. I know it sounds unusual, but we need to make things harder for them." For the first time, he smiled genuinely. "I like that. My wife and the other person won't be able to do anything with the kids there unless she takes them to the sitter herself. She has her own car and never lets anyone else drive it, even me." He lowered his voice so only I could hear him. I looked around to see nobody was paying attention to us. After his moment of frustration, the people in the bar returned to their conversations. "Mr. Turner, I need to ask you something. Has your wife always been the one in charge?" He looked down for a moment before saying, "Yes, she has. She was the one who approached me first, if you can believe it." He chuckled lightly. I nodded. "Sir, I think once this is over, you should think about a divorce." "Are her parents still around?" "Yes, but she warned me that if I told them or anyone what was happening, I'd never see my kids again," he replied, worry in his eyes. "I believe she would follow through with that threat and might even take them away." "That won't happen," I promised him, hoping I could keep that promise. Then I had a tough question to ask. I noticed in the photo of the kids that they didn't look much like Turner. They seemed to take after his wife, and that made me uneasy, so I decided to ask the hardest question of our conversation. "Mr. Turner, are you completely sure those children are yours? Please don't take this the wrong way, but with how your wife is acting, is it possible she may have been unfaithful and the kids are not yours?" He looked pale as those words sank in. A worried expression crossed his face, and it seemed like he was unsure. "Get a DNA test, Mr. Turner. It's important to know," I urged him. "If they aren't yours, you might have a chance to seek support from the real father. If they are yours, you will still have some rights as their father." I tried to deliver the news gently. I had thought about becoming a lawyer at one point, so I had learned a bit about legal matters. Family law was one of the more complex areas. The hard part was turning legal language into simple words. He just shook his head, lost in thought. "I'm sorry, Mr. Shepard. I need to be stronger about what I have to do. I care for my kids, and I loved my wife until things changed. She was a bit controlling before, but she also showed love and care in our relationship. I understand. My ex-wife moved on to someone else. Fortunately, I wasn't very in love, and I was away a lot. I wasn't ready for marriage. I hope to find the right partner and settle down, but I won't let anyone take advantage of me." "I see what you're saying, but Candace meant everything to me. I really admired her," he said, wiping away a tear. "And she hurt you as well." "Mr. Turner, in any future relationships, don't give in to every request unless it's mutual. If you feel strongly about something, stand firm. You'll earn more respect that way. I had a friend who went through a tough divorce after his partner let him down due to a lack of respect. He tried to give his all, only to be disappointed. He smiled and nodded, looking more at ease. I get your point, and you're right. Maybe if I had been firmer a few years ago, I wouldn't be in this situation now. Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Okay, Mr. Turner, my name is Declan. Everyone calls me Deck. Mr. Shepard was my dad. I smiled. Declan, I'm William. Nice to meet you, and thank you for your help, he said, shaking my hand. Oh, and I prefer William over nicknames. Good to meet you too, William. Don't thank me until it's all done. Now, about my payment. Of course, I have a bank money order here for $25,000, and it's yours. You'll get the other half when you finish what you're planning, as long as my wife can't act on her threats. He handed me the money order, and I took it with a nod. It won't be a matter of can't. By the time I'm finished, she won't want to. Oh, do you know where Gordon works? I asked, raising an eyebrow. He doesn't work. He comes from a wealthy family, or so he says, William replied with a grin. Wealthy people probably have security around them all the time. That could be a problem, I said, thinking it over. He laughed. No way! He's so full of himself. He thinks he's the only security he needs. This could be entertaining, I thought as I chuckled with him. All right, let's move on. Head home and act normal. It might be tempting, but don't show off if he doesn't show up tomorrow. Keep your behavior the same and don't give your soon-to-be ex-wife any reasons to think you were part of anything. Remember the trick with the key in the ignition. Got it? He nodded, determination in his eyes. Good. It's Thursday afternoon. Does your wife suspect you're here? No, she thinks I'm at work as usual. I own my own accounting firm. I nearly laughed out loud when I heard that, but I kept my expression calm. I had to really hold back my laughter. Okay, let's go, I said, getting ready to leave. We shook hands one last time and I stepped outside. Now I had the guy's name, address, and $25,000 to put in my bank account. After making the deposit, I drove over to Gordon's house to keep an eye on things. He wasn't there yet, but soon a fancy Lamborghini pulled into the driveway. I parked a bit down the road and waited until he drove up the driveway. I quickly slipped out of my car and through the gate before it closed. The house was hard to see from the road, so I walked through the small patch of trees between the house and the street. When I got closer to the driveway, I saw him getting out of his car with a well-dressed woman. I could hear some of their talk as they made their way to the door. I warned you, Gordon. You could get in trouble with Mr. Turner. Threatening someone can lead to serious problems if his wife backs him up, she said. That's why I pay you, Tabitha. You're supposed to help me stay out of these messes. She knows what's best for her and cares about me, he replied with a sneer. She won't speak against me, he seemed to think. She was his lawyer. That made sense. Mr. Smith, I can end our agreement, she said as they got to the door. Your actions are becoming too much to handle. If you fire me, I'll make things hard for you, he shouted at her. That was enough for me. I couldn't let him bully her. I sprinted toward him before he could react. Tabitha stepped back, but I wanted to make sure she was safe. This surveillance was not going as planned. Gordon spotted me coming and looked surprised as I got closer. He was taken aback by the sudden confrontation, but he quickly steadied himself. That's it, Gordon! You're done! Tabitha yelled as I moved closer, making him unsteady again. The air left him as I interrupted, and he stumbled backward. He fell to one knee, and I turned to Tabitha. Are you all right? I asked her. Now I am, thank. Watch out, she shouted. I ducked just in time, avoiding his attack. I kept my eyes on him. Gordon Smith hit the ground. Let's get out of here, I said. Where's your car? Back at my office. He drove me here and said he would take me back later. I'll give you a ride. I'm parked across the street, I replied, and we rushed away before he could recover. Once we were in my car, she directed me back to her office. Has he ever acted like that before? I asked as we drove. What? Try to bully me? No. He's been acting more unstable lately, thinking that money can fix everything, she said, shaking her head. That won't happen again, I promised her. Who are you anyway? I know you didn't just come here to help me, she said, giving a nervous laugh. My name is Declan Shepard, and I'm here to help someone with a problem, I replied. Are you a private investigator? She asked. Not exactly. I'm supporting someone, and Mr. Smith is an important part of that. Unfortunately, my original plan didn't go as I expected, I explained. Let me guess. William Turner hired you? I can't share my client's name, I said carefully. I didn't want to mention William to someone who had just been working for the other side. It's okay, she said with a smirk. With the way Gordon's been acting, I was already thinking of letting him go. I nodded, agreeing with what she already seemed to know. I thought so, she said with a genuine smile. He can't do anything against Gordon himself, so he brought in someone who could, right? Something like that. I didn't mean to cause any lasting problems, but Mr. Smith didn't give me many choices. Then another thought crossed my mind. Do you think he'll complain about me? Nah, I really doubt it. Even if he did, you were acting in defense of someone else, and I was his lawyer. I'll back you up if it comes to that, but I can pretty much assure you he won't. He wouldn't want to lose face. He would rather come after you directly. Honestly, he's not that smart, she said with a small smile as she shook her head. I smiled back as we arrived at her law office. The sign next to the door said Williams, Stanton, and Keller. It wasn't a huge place, but it was clean and nicely decorated inside. 2 other female lawyers were there, but they paused when they saw us come in. Tabby, where's Gordon? The first woman asked, her short hair styled in a cute way. He's been let go, Shelley, Tabitha replied. Could you please pack up his files and send them to his home? You got it, Tabs, Shelley answered, looking relieved. Who's this nice man, Tabby? The other lawyer asked, making me chuckle. Easy now, Tabitha said. Declan, this is Shelley Stanton and Maggie Keller. Shelley and Maggie meet Declan Shepherd. She introduced me to the brunette and the redhead. Maggie seemed very friendly, looking at me with interest. Tabitha took my arm and led me into her office. Once the door was closed and locked, she turned to me and smiled. Maggie can be quite a challenge. Trust me on this. I can manage myself, but I'm not really interested, to be honest, I said with a smile. She nodded and sat down in the chair behind her desk. She gestured for me to sit in one of the chairs in front of her, so I did. Declan Shepherd, you're a good person, she said with a smile. Thanks. I try, I replied playfully. So, Tabitha. I'd rather you call me Tabby when we're friends. You count as a friend for helping me, she said warmly. I heard Maggie call you that. It fits you well. I smiled back. There was definitely a connection between us. So, what's your story, Declan? She asked after a moment. Well, everyone calls me Deck. Do I really need a story? I said with a smirk. She looked at me, letting me know she wanted to hear more, so I shared a brief version of my life. Something about her made me feel comfortable, even without sharing every detail. My parents died in a plane crash when I was 6, and I moved in with my aunt and uncle. They became my guardians, and my cousin Kara felt like a sister. We were really close, but after I left the Army and started working in private security, we grew apart. It wasn't until after I left Red River that we started to mend things. I got married during that time, but we divorced a year later. I just got tired of that lifestyle. It wasn't who I wanted to be. Now, I'm living off the money I saved from that job and looking for a new path, something without conflict. I've had some tempting offers, but I want to stay clear of that life. Unfortunately, my skills don't exactly fit with a quiet life. I paused, noticing how attentively she was listening. Earlier today, I met Mr. Turner at a bar, heard his story, and asked some questions. I offered to help him the way he was going to pay a private investigator before he declined, I concluded. She thought about what I said before responding. Did he want you to do something wrong? She asked after a moment. He wanted the private investigator to create a situation that would make his wife seem unfit. I sensed that wouldn't end well, so I came up with my own idea. Luckily, you showed up with that trouble. And now here we are, I said, looking around her office. Don't you mean unfortunately? She said with a light laugh. Nope. I can think of a new plan, but if I hadn't acted, he would have caused more problems. I won't stand for anyone being rude to women. So you've never been rude to a woman? She asked, raising an eyebrow. And God willing, I won't ever be, I replied, shaking my head. I wasn't brought up that way, and if I ever did act poorly towards a lady, my aunt would make sure I regretted it. She nodded, looking a bit confused. The way you say aunt, she began, noticing my pronunciation. My uncle is white, my aunt is black, and my cousin, their daughter, is biracial, I explained with a shrug. She nodded and smiled. I understand. Based on our earlier conversation, do you value strong friendships? I appreciate great personalities, and you are truly special, I replied honestly. Nice words won't change much, but I can tell you mean it, she said with a small smile. I meant what I said, Tabby. You're impressive, and I would be happy to take you out for dinner or spend time together, I answered. We'll see, she said playfully. So you know about me. What about your story? I asked while I thought about Gordon. It's not as exciting. I grew up in New Jersey and moved here for UCLA after a short marriage. Shelley and Maggie were my roommates in college and law school. We worked hard as public defenders, and when we saved up, we opened this little cafe. Business is good now, but the first couple of years were tough, she explained. Why didn't you let Gordon go earlier? I asked. If you knew he was causing trouble, why keep him around? She sighed and looked down for a moment. His fees were important for keeping this place running. I'm good at my job. I've managed to keep him out of big trouble. Without my help, he could have faced serious problems. He was involved in a major issue? I asked, surprised. I'm not sure. He always claimed innocence, and the evidence was mostly weak. There were no direct links to him. His connection with the victim's spouse actually worked in our favor since she testified for us, saying he was with her at the time. Security footage backed their story, and without strong evidence, we won the case, she said, a troubled look crossing her face. Honestly, I thought about ending things after that. I had my doubts about his innocence. Now I wonder if he might have been behind something. But because of legal rules, he can't be tried again, even if we find others involved. Proving it would be hard. If he was behind something, then Turner could be in danger, I noted, as I took my phone out to call him. This is William Turner, he answered. What's going on, Deck? Is everything all right? Not yet. A new problem came up, but I wanted to warn you that Gordon might try something before I can handle it. Please be careful, and if you have any protection, keep it nearby and ready. One moment, he said. There were a few quiet minutes before he spoke again. Okay, I stepped out of the room to a different part of the house. I told my wife it was Phil Decker from work. He also goes by Deck. What's happening? I glanced at Tabby, who nodded with concern. William, you need to be very careful until I say otherwise. I'm in Tabitha Williams' office. She just told me that Gordon Smith is not mentally stable. Do you remember the trial a while back where he was the defendant? I asked. Honestly, I couldn't recall. I had been out of the country at that time. Yes, I remember. It was all over the news, but he was found not guilty. That was about 2 years ago. Do you think he... Tabitha believes it's very possible. Gordon might not be as clueless as we thought. We don't think he did it himself. Most likely he got someone else to do it. His excuse for being elsewhere was convincing during the time his rival was harmed. I understand, he replied. But I don't have any means to defend myself. Candace doesn't want me to have anything like that. She doesn't like them. That's partly why she knows if you had something, you could turn things to your advantage, I said. You should get something now and wait a week before you actually pick it up. I hope by then we'll have dealt with everything and you won't need it. I hope you're right, Deck, he replied. William, listen carefully. Even if I am right, you might still need to protect yourself and your family. From what you've shared and what I've heard, your wife could be just as challenging as Gordon. It seems like she won't accept losing control easily. I'm not saying you should get something out of anger, but you might need it just for protection. Also, don't forget to get what you need for it. He chuckled lightly. I've handled these things before, so I know what I'm doing. Good to hear. I suggest a revolver. A38 would be a good choice. Okay, that sounds good, he said. I'll get one first thing in the morning. I felt uneasy about the first thing in the morning part, but I figured if everything went well, he might not need it for Gordon. All right, I said. William, just keep acting normal and hopefully this will all be over soon. By the time I'm finished, your wife won't want custody, but even if she does, things may not turn out how she plans. If you can make this work, Deck, I'll be very grateful, he said. Don't worry, you'll just owe me the other $25K, I joked. He laughed. I'll pay you as soon as you sort this out and keep Candace from trying to gain custody. I'll do my best on both fronts, and my best is quite effective. I smiled. See you later, William. All right, goodbye, he said before hanging up. Once the call ended, I looked up at Tabby, who was smiling. It's nice to see someone standing up for those who need it. I've always had a soft spot for the underdog, I shrugged. Besides, he offered me $50K to do the job, and I don't leave a job unfinished once I start it. We chatted for a while, getting to know each other, our likes and dislikes, favorite movies, music, and food. We had more in common than I expected. I had a solid plan to deal with Gordy, which let me focus more on the nice lady I was talking to. We were talking when Maggie knocked on Tabby's office door. I unlocked it and let her in. Maggie and Shelley told Tabby they were leaving for the night. I checked my watch, and sure enough, it was after 10 p.m. Oh my, Tabby chuckled, blushing. I didn't realize it was so late. No problem, Tabs, Shelley said. We'll see you tomorrow. She winked at me, and both of them gave us knowing smiles before leaving. I think they think we're a couple, Tabby said after they left. I wouldn't mind that, I grinned. But not tonight. I have a new plan to handle your former client. I need to sort a few things out first, but it shouldn't take long. Deck, please don't take it too far. He may be tough to deal with, but I can't support extreme actions. I stood up and took her hand in mine. Tabby, you have my word. I won't go too far. Her touch felt electric. Her hand was soft, and without thinking, I gently kissed the back of her hand. Oh my, she stuttered. A real gentleman? I thought that was a thing of the past. Not gone, just not seen very often, I smiled. I won't lie, Deck. I can't remember the last time someone treated me like this. I kissed her hand again. Well, now hopefully you will. She stood up from behind her desk and moved closer to me. When we were face to face, she reached up and we shared a brief kiss. It felt special. Not until this is all over, Declan, she said softly. You're right, I replied, gazing into her dark brown eyes. But when this is done, I'm taking you out for dinner, maybe dancing, and then we'll see what happens. She gave me a playful smile. I think you might have some ideas. I don't want to assume, I replied, smiling back. Then I won't say more for now. Get Gordon to stay away from Turner, and then we'll have some time for us. I promise not to go too far. But when I'm finished with him, he might wish he was never here. She shrugged. Sounds good to me. Now I hate to rush you out. I understand, I smiled. By the way, can I have your number? Sure, she said with a grin, taking my phone. She added her number, then called herself to save my number and hers. There. Now we have each other's numbers. I'll call you when it's done, Tabby. I promise you. With those words, I leaned down and shared a quick, warm moment with her, feeling a strong connection between us. I left her with her eyes closed as I turned and walked out of her office. The next morning, I began to put my plan into action. I had gathered some useful information about Gordy, and it was time to move forward. I spent a few hours the night before using Google and Bing to learn everything I could about his past arrests and court cases. This told me most of what I had already suspected about him. First, he was very rich. He was part of an old, wealthy family and was almost as rich as some of the wealthiest people in the world. Second, he was very self-centered. He cared a lot about how he looked and used his appearance to charm people around him. Third, he mainly seemed to go after married women. He had been mentioned in several divorce cases in Boston, where he was originally from, and even a few here in California. He had also faced trouble after a fight with a man who caught him in a bad situation with his wife. Luckily for Gordy, he managed to settle that case as well. Fourth, he had a history of drug problems. He had been arrested several times in Boston for having drugs, but always found a way out with legal help. Fifth, he rarely faced rejection. But when he did, the women involved seemed to go through troubling experiences soon after, often unable to identify what happened. Seeing that last part made me think he might hire people to get back at those women when he couldn't do it himself. They acted in a way that showed he preferred having others do his difficult tasks instead of handling things personally. Interestingly, none of the women had been hurt during those incidents. They all identified him, but no actions were taken against him. Just like in the murder case, Gordy had a solid alibi and no evidence linking him to the women's troubles. At first I thought he was foolish, but I realized this was not entirely true. He was clever, and I had to acknowledge that. He was one of those people who liked to let others do the hard work for him. I figured he paid them in a way that couldn't be traced back to him. I had met similar types before, mostly in Red River. The main difference was that those people tended to deal with their problems directly rather than hire help. Still, they had the same kind of selfish bully behavior. Gordy wasn't just a bully, he was a coward. He acted tough with his "I'm my own protector" attitude, but he avoided real confrontations unless he felt he was truly threatened and had no way to get out. My key advantage was that he didn't even know I was watching him. But now, that advantage was a little less because he was aware of my presence. However, he still didn't know who I really was. This was my chance to act. Yesterday's plan was meant to be a quick check on the security at his house. Things got harder because I hadn't gathered enough information on his security system. The bright side was that I had a surprise for him. It was almost noon, so it was close to my meeting with Gordon again. I had just finished my shower when my phone rang. I smiled when I saw Tabby's name and answered, "Hello, beautiful. Deck, I'm glad I reached you. Whatever you're planning with Gordon, you're too late. He's already on his way to Turner's house." "Oh, no," I said. I should have expected this. "How do you know?" "Turner called me. He found my office number online and told me Gordon was on his way. That was just 5 minutes ago." There was a pause, and I thought I heard someone talking in the background. When she came back, she said, "If you hurry, you might catch him. Turner overheard a chat his wife was having, so he called me. Now go." "I won't wait," I said. "I'll be there in 5. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, I stood in front of William Turner's house. I had grabbed a snack on the way, and it took me a moment to find it, so I missed my chance to meet him. His car was already parked out front. He hadn't even locked it. I walked up to the door after checking something on the car. I wondered why he hadn't called me before Tabby. That seemed odd. I got my answer when I reached his door. I rang the bell and heard some rustling inside. When the door opened, it was Mrs. Turner, or Candace, who answered. "Yes?" she asked, sounding a bit annoyed. I had to admit she looked even more impressive in person than in photos. "Ma'am, are you Candace Turner, wife of William Turner?" I asked. I was thinking on my feet, as this new situation had changed my plans. It seemed luck was not with me, and I was already considering another approach. She sighed. "For now, yes. What has he done this time?" "He hired me as his personal guard," I said confidently. "I have full authority to protect him. May I come in?" My tone surprised her, and she stepped back slightly as I moved forward. Inside, I saw that Gordy had William backed against the wall. He turned towards us, opening his mouth to speak, but stopped when he saw me. William, bless him, introduced me, saying, "This is my new guard, the Equalizer. I ensure fairness and protect my clients," I said as I approached Gordy steadily. Gordy looked uneasy as I neared. He let go of William and got ready to protect himself, standing in a way that showed he knew a bit about martial arts, even though it was clear he wasn't fully sure of himself. He was more likely to hurt himself than anyone else. I felt a small sense of satisfaction seeing his swollen nose, a reminder of our earlier encounter, and I could feel his fear. "Run," I said as I got closer. He didn't hesitate. But he made the mistake of trying to dash past me to the front door, and I easily moved to block him. He tripped and fell onto the floor, his hands slipping as he tried to catch himself. Candace watched me in shock. The power had shifted in just a few moments. "Where are your children?" I asked William calmly. "And why aren't you at work?" "Ow," Gordy groaned as he got up, still holding his nose. "They're at school. I would have called you, but my wife interrupted my call to Miss Williams. I'm glad she called you for me," he said, visibly relieved. I nodded. "I'm glad she did. Now, since this is your home, do you want to file a complaint about trespassing?" "Yes," he said excitedly. "Then please call 911, I said with a nod. I then turned my attention back to Mrs. Turner. "Mrs. Turner, it seems, mister. Turner is serious about getting a divorce," I said, keeping my tone steady. She scoffed. "He wouldn't dare. He knows what's at risk," she replied dismissively. Disobeying a court order about custody can lead to serious results, I added firmly. She glared at me but didn't respond. William, however, stood firm. Candace, this is happening. I won't let fear control my choices anymore. He took out his phone to make a call. Meanwhile, Gordon, still trying to recover from earlier, looked unsteady. I approached him and quietly said, "It's best if you leave now. Actions have consequences, and you should think carefully about your choices." Candace returned with a towel to help Gordon, and I stepped aside to let her assist him. Moments later, there was a knock at the door, and William opened it to two officers in uniform. "Thank you for coming so quickly," William said, stepping back to let them in. The officers looked around the room. "Mr. Turner, can you tell us who is trespassing?" asked Officer Horton, the lead officer. William pointed calmly. "That would be him," he said, pointing toward Gordon. Gordon, clearly upset, tried to speak, but it didn't help his case. The officers stayed calm as they dealt with the situation. "Shepard is acting as my bodyguard," William said. He explained everything to the officers, who took notes on their notepads. "I would like you to ask Candace Turner to leave, please," William said at last. "She is going to get divorce papers soon, and I don't feel safe with her here anymore." "You can't do this to me," Candace shouted. "I own this place. You'll never see your children again." "Ma'am, please calm down," Officer John said gently, as the younger of the two officers. The front door was still open, and I looked outside to see Tabby walking up the driveway with Maggie and Shelley right behind her. William noticed me looking. "Ah, my lawyers are here." "Good," he said. He was smiling now. He seemed to have taken charge of the situation, and with Tabby's strong leadership, it was likely that William wouldn't have to worry about financial support after the divorce. When they reached the door, Maggie handed a manila envelope to William first before turning to Candace. "Are you Candace Turner, ma'am?" she asked. "Why, yes, I am. What's happening?" she replied, starting to understand. Maggie handed her another manila envelope. "Candace Turner, you have been served," she said confidently. Then she looked at William. "This is your copy of the divorce papers. I filed them for reasons of unfaithfulness on your behalf." "I'm no divorce lawyer, but Maggie is one of the best," Tabby said with a smile as we exchanged surprised looks. "That's right. Oh, there's one more thing," Maggie added, pulling a third manila envelope from her bag. She handed it to Gordon. "Gordon Smith, you have been served as part of the divorce between Mr. William Turner and Mrs. Candace Turner." "How did you manage to do this so quickly?" I asked with a laugh as Gordon stood there, surprised by what had just happened. Shelley explained, "When we arrived at the office this morning, Tabby told us about the situation. Maggie wrote the divorce papers super fast, just in case. It usually takes a day or two, but we finished in just a few hours." "Maggie is amazing at her job," Tabby said, smiling. "That's why I keep her around." Everyone laughed, even the officers. But Gordon and Candace were not laughing. The officers arrested Gordon for being where he shouldn't have been and took him downtown. They also arrested Candace for refusing to leave the home. William had owned the house before he even met Candace. The house was in his name, so it wouldn't be shared property in the divorce. As the owner, he had the right to ask anyone unwelcome to leave. After the officers took Gordon and Candace away, we all sat down as Tabby and her team explained everything to us. "We figured you might need our help," Tabby said. "From your call this morning, it was clear that things were reaching a breaking point. So are we hired? Our fees are reasonable." "Absolutely. You're hired," William said with a smile and a relieved laugh. "Okay. Why didn't you call me before reaching out to Tabby?" I asked. "She contacted me to explain what was happening. I was going to call her first to see if she could help with my divorce. I was about to dial her number when I heard Candace ask Gordon to come over quickly. So I finished dialing and then asked Miss Williams to get in touch with you because Candace found me talking to her. She came to see me right after she spoke with Gordon. I told Tabitha to call you right before I had to handle the situation." "Got it. Here," I said, pulling out a small recorder from my pocket. "This has your wife's statement saying she would interfere with custody to stop you from seeing your children if the divorce happened." His eyes widened. "Really?" I pressed play. "So, if the judge gives Mr. Turner partial custody, you would go against that?" "As if they could track me down. I can easily move to a place where they can't reach me. My husband will never see his kids again. I hit stop. Do you think that can be used in court? I asked the ladies, raising an eyebrow. It should work. Mr. Turner, since you asked Mr. Shepard to record that here, your wife won't be able to dispute it. She made that statement willingly, Maggie said, smiling. William quickly understood. Of course I did, he replied with a smile. I made it clear that Mr. Shepard could record anything helpful for my divorce from Candace. I opened the SD card slot and took the card out, handing it to William. Mr. Turner, this is the recording you asked for. Thank you, Mr. Shepard, he said, and then gave the SD card to Maggie. She placed it in a small, clear case with the other divorce papers to file with the judge. I made sure that my conversation with Candace was the only thing recorded. I had pressed start just before my question, and stopped right after her reply. It had been part of my backup plan. I had grabbed the recorder hoping for something useful against either William, myself, or both. When Candace had spoken openly about the children, I took the opportunity. A perfect chance. Tension had increased when the authorities arrived and saw what was happening. Now I can move forward with getting a protective measure, William said. He then turned to Maggie. Could you help me get a restraining order against my wife and her partner so they can't come to the house, my workplace, or the school? I can prepare one quickly and present it to a judge by the end of the day, she said with a smile. Maggie definitely had a plan in mind and was set on helping him through this situation. I didn't know Shelley and Maggie very well, but I appreciated what they were trying to do. I just hoped I wouldn't find myself in a tough spot like Gordy and Candace were at that moment. So, what do we do now? William asked everyone in the room. Maggie replied, First, we have some tasks for you. She then listed everything he needed to do before the end of the day. First, he had to go to the bank to close their joint account and move all his money to his own account. He also needed to tell the principal at the kids' school that his wife could not pick up the children at any time. After that, he had to cancel their joint credit cards. I felt lucky that Cindy hadn't wanted anything from me during our divorce. I had no idea it could feel so intense in some cases. I saw the strategy clearly. Divorces like this feel like a battle. You want to limit the other person's resources while protecting your own. Taking the money from the joint account was a smart move for William. His wife wouldn't have any money for a lawyer, and he would have a better chance to support himself. It was also important to secure the kids' school situation, especially with her threats about taking them. Plus, canceling the credit cards would affect his soon-to-be ex-wife while strengthening his position. I had to give credit to Maggie. She knew a lot about the details of divorce cases. Come on, Deck, Tabby said quietly to me. Let's let the experts do their thing. I came with Maggie and Shelley, so my car is at the office. Can you take me to lunch? I'm getting a bit hungry. Maggie was still explaining some details to William, and I found myself somewhat distracted by Tabby's presence. Part of me wanted to share more of my feelings. All right, everyone. I'm taking Tabby out for lunch. Will you all be okay without us for a little while? I asked. We'll be fine, hun, Maggie said with a friendly smile. You two make sure to have fun. As we stood up to leave, Maggie was telling William that he needed to change the locks on the house and update the alarm code as well. Once we got into my '79 Camaro, Tabby looked at me and squeezed my hand. I smiled back. Is there a reason why you're looking at me like that? I asked, amused. Just wondering why we didn't meet 10 years ago, she said. You could have helped me avoid marrying my difficult ex. I remember you telling me that last night, I said. Sounds like it was his fault. Exactly. He couldn't keep his promises. It caused a lot of talk in our community when I decided to end things. After that, I moved to California, went to college and law school. The rest is pretty well known. You said your story wasn't very interesting, I chuckled. It's definitely more interesting than my divorce from Cindy. Do you believe in second chances? She asked. I looked at her curiously and she added, not just for people who break trust, but second chances at love. Good, because I had a girlfriend who was not honest with me before. I didn't take her back, and by the end, everyone knew what happened because my cousin made sure of it. I need to meet your cousin, she laughed. She lives in Santa Barbara near my family, my aunt and uncle, I said with a smile. As for your question, yes, I believe in second chances at love. I won't lie, Tabby. I've felt attracted to you since I saw you standing up for yourself yesterday. Me too, Deck, she said with a smile. I've dated different people, but you really stand out. You are quite different from them. That made me smile. I sensed her interest. After my experience with Cindy, I promised myself I wouldn't rush into things again. I felt drawn to Tabby, but I wanted to do things differently this time. Tabby, please don't misunderstand. You are amazing, and I want to spend more time with you. But I'm a little hesitant about starting a new relationship. It worries me that I feel such a strong connection with you. Her smile faded for a moment. What do you mean, Deck? I'm saying I want to take it slow with you. I don't just want a short fling. I want to date you, get to know you, and make sure my feelings are genuine. I went on to share how it was with Cindy. It was a whirlwind romance, and things fell apart when she got involved with someone else. The split was friendly, and soon I realized I didn't miss her at all. Watching William go through a difficult situation made me think about my own past. I understand where you're coming from, she smiled. My divorce was difficult. If you want to take it slow, I'm fine with that. It makes sense for both of us. We exchanged smiles, and I felt a strong bond with her. Where do you want to eat? I asked as our conversation shifted to our plans. I know a little place near the office, she said. I'll show you where it is. We arrived at the diner, and I was impressed. I love a good burger, and Tabby said they had some of the best in California. Once inside, we ordered our food and chatted while waiting. We talked about our favorite types of music. I was surprised to learn that she liked country music and even some metal, while I shared that I enjoyed R&B along with my metal. I mentioned that I sometimes listened to country too. When it came to food, she said her favorite was Chinese, and I told her I loved Italian. I also like Chinese food, and she enjoys Italian as well. We chatted while we ate, and I realized I learned more about her during our talks than I ever did about my ex-wife in our year of marriage. Tabby had been married for 2 years to a man named Thomas. From what she said, I imagined he was someone hard to get along with. When I mentioned this, she laughed lightly. That's not far off, she said with a smile. He broke my trust in a very typical way. Ouch! I'm lucky that Cindy wasn't unfaithful, at least that I know of. When she told me about another person, she made it clear they hadn't been together yet, but that she was in love with him. When I found out who it was, I felt a bit sorry for him. If they don't have a prenup, I think she'll take a lot from him if they split. Sounds like quite a catch, huh? Yes. A well-known lawyer named Warren Symington, I replied, feeling a bit surprised. I guess lawyers usually earn more than private security consultants, even though I was doing well. Tabby's eyes widened. Warren Symington? She said. I had a tough meeting with him a few months ago with another client. He's the assistant DA for Los Angeles. Small world, I chuckled. I feel a bit sorry for him if Cindy finds someone else who earns more. She shrugged. I think he deserves it if she takes what he has. I just nodded. Well, it would teach him a lesson about trusting the wrong people. Did she really not ask for much in the divorce? Nope. She just said she wanted to move on. No division of property, no alimony, no kids, so no child support. Just a clean break, I said with a smirk. I believe she was ready to start fresh with someone new. If she's looking for reasons to leave him, he sounds like a piece of work. He flirts with every woman he meets. He's 50 but acts much younger in relationships. Sometimes I wonder if he knows what it means to be mature. That's a little worrying, I said, unable to suppress my laughter. Do you really think he would take those kinds of risks? Yuck, she said with a grimace. I wouldn't be surprised. He even tried to flirt with Judge Sherman once. She should really think about retiring given her age. I laughed at that. Are you sure she is that old? Well, she's probably around 60, but she seems much older. That's a bit surprising, I admitted. Yeah, Warren likes to flirt, so I think your ex might want to know if he's acting inappropriately. I'm not too concerned. It's her life. If she finds out and makes good choices, that's great, I said with a shrug. Tabby laughed. You're pretty easygoing, aren't you? Most of the time, yes. If I focused on the negative, I'd go crazy. I just take things as they come and do what I need to do. That's really nice. I admire that in a person, she said, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. I looked into her warm eyes, and we shared a smile. Tabby is a strong woman, and she uses her strength in a good way. I respect that about her. She stands up for herself like when she confronted Gordon and supported William. You aren't like many lawyers I've met, Tabby. You actually have a good heart, I said, looking into her eyes. Thank you, she replied with a bright smile. I try to see the good in people, but it can be hard when I have to deal with some difficult situations. I understand that, I said. At Red River, it was easy to spot those who just wanted trouble. I've met people like Gordon. Most of them weren't as afraid as he is. At least they took responsibility for their actions. It's frustrating to see someone like Gordon hide behind others, I said. Frustrating is a good way to put it, she responded with a laugh. He called for help whenever he got into trouble, especially when things got tough. I laughed with her. We talked for another 20 minutes before asking for the check. After I paid, I walked her to her car. We said a quick goodbye, and I followed her back to William's place. When we arrived, William and the others were just getting back from their errands. Shelley had gone with him, while Maggie had gone to file some important papers with the court. They were still giving him tips on how to prepare for what was ahead. He had taken his wife off his insurance and medical plans, naming his kids as the main beneficiaries. He also went to the hospital to take a DNA sample to confirm about the kids. Their DNA was already recorded from their birth, so it wouldn't take long to compare it and get the results. Wow. I felt fortunate that my divorce wasn't as difficult as some others, I said with a slight smile as our coaching session came to an end. When I shared this with Maggie and Shelley, they laughed and said I must have had some good luck. Well, I hope I don't have to go through a tough situation like William's, I said, smiling. But I want to stay involved. I have a feeling you might need my support soon. I have a strange feeling about everything. I hope you're wrong, but we appreciate any help, Maggie replied with a smile. You've been really helpful already with that recording against Mrs. Turner. I saved it for the upcoming court hearings and made some copies while I was at it. She handed me a copy on a separate card and also gave copies to William and Tabby. There you go, just in case something happens to the original. After what happened with Gordon before, I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to tamper with the evidence for her. Do you think he would really do that? William asked. You stood up to him, William, Tabby said. People like him don't like it when their victims fight back. Right now, he is facing some serious trouble. You and Deck will likely be asked to speak against him in court. William looked at me, and I nodded to show my support. He looked back at Tabby. I'm not scared of him anymore. I will testify to make sure he is held accountable. Then he turned back to me. I have a week until I can pick up the firearm I bought a while ago. I've also applied for a hidden weapons permit. I nodded. I should have thought of that, but I heard those permits are hard to get in California. It showed that William was taking charge of his own safety. Good. That way, you'll feel safer when you're out, I said, showing my respect for him. But I have a question. What is it? He asked. If the kids aren't biologically yours, will you still want custody? I asked, wanting to understand his position. He sighed. Yes, I will. If it turns out they have a different father, I'll seek legal action against Candace and the biological father for misleading me and any support I missed, since I was led to believe they were mine. If they are my children, which I truly believe they are, I won't take action against anyone and won't care about support from Candace. Either way, I love my children, no matter whose they are. Sounds like a good plan, I said with a shrug. He had been the kids' father all their lives and loved them very much. I saw the determination on his face and hoped that one day I could be a father too. Cindy had been using birth control throughout our relationship, and I was okay with that at the time. But now things had changed. So what's next? William asked Maggie, bringing me back to the moment. I think that's about all you can do for now, William, she replied. You will likely hear about their court date soon, and we will update you if they are released on bond. For now, we have the restraining and no-contact orders set up, which will be reviewed after your first divorce hearing. I'll work on making them permanent, but you need to avoid contacting Gordon and Candace completely. If you do, the judge might cancel those orders. I understand, he nodded. I've never been one to boast, and I appreciate your help in this tough time." With that, he stood and shook hands with everyone. "Don't thank us just yet, William," Tabby warned. "There are still many things that could go wrong, and you might still be in danger from Gordon. We can't prove anything yet, but because of his threats, we have to keep a close eye on you and your children. That's where Deck comes in." "That's what I'm here for," I said with a smile, but it disappeared as I got serious. "William, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This could get risky for you and your kids. Even with the restraining order, it's just a piece of paper. You can't use your firearm for a week, which won't give you much extra safety. If you know how to use it, it can help protect your home. Getting a concealed carry license would also be wise. But until then, if you have any trouble or think someone is following you, call me right after you call 911. Do you understand?" I had done enough bodyguard work to know that keeping someone safe could be dangerous. If someone posed a threat, I had to be cautious. In this case, I knew the people involved, but it would be worrying if Gordon hired someone to hurt William. Despite his dislike of confrontation, I had to protect him while also watching out for myself. I was also concerned about Tabby. She could hold her own and was strong-willed, but she was still just as vulnerable as anyone else. I hoped Gordon wouldn't act recklessly, but you never know with some people. "I understand," he said, nodding thoughtfully. He was taking everything well. My first impression of him had been right. He had a strong spirit. I just wished his appearance matched his courage. I often wondered how he ended up in such a difficult situation with Candace all those years. It seemed clear that he cared for her deeply. She didn't seem to feel the same way anymore, if she ever did, judging by how she treated him over the last year. I thought she had lost all respect for him because he always gave in to her wishes without putting up a fight. By the time he decided to stand his ground, it was too late, and her attitude had changed a lot. It didn't help that she had a new friend who could easily dominate him if she wanted to. So here I was, trying to bring some balance to this situation. My job was simple in theory: protect William Turner and support him until this issue was sorted out. In reality, it was much more complicated. Protect William from an unstable person and an unpredictable soon-to-be ex-wife. The situation was made worse because the unstable person's former lawyer was now working with his opponent, adding another layer of difficulty. He might want to retaliate against her for changing sides. This was going to be tough. After talking about our plans with my colleagues and hoping everything would go as planned, I left and went home. I took a shower and turned on the TV to watch the news. I was surprised to see a story about Gordon Smith and his latest arrest. The report was live, and I recognized William's house. When the camera showed the front door, William was on the porch with Maggie and Shelley nearby. Maggie was answering the questions. "Mr. Turner has no comment at this time," she stated. "As for his bodyguard, he isn't needed right now because Mr. Smith and Mrs. Turner are currently in custody. Next question." "How did Mr. Turner end up in a new relationship?" the reporter asked. This time, William stepped forward. "Listen carefully. I was not a willing participant, and I am currently getting divorced from my soon-to-be ex-wife. Mr. Smith is involved as a correspondent in the case, and I will not accept any false claims. This interview is over." With that, he turned and went back inside his house, followed by Shelley and Maggie. The door closed firmly in the reporter's face as he tried to ask another question. I couldn't help but smile. In that moment, William made me proud. He stood up for himself and clearly stated his feelings to the journalists. The reporter, trying to regain his composure, told the audience he was surprised by Mr. Turner's reaction. I just shook my head and changed the channel. William had remained calm and composed. He delivered his last statement with confidence, leaving the reporter looking foolish. It reminded me of past times when news anchors asked questions that didn't really get more answers, especially during tough moments. Taking things slow with Tabby was harder than I expected. During that first week, we had lunch or dinner together every day until the following Wednesday. That's when we found out that Gordon had made bail and had also helped Candace. This news brought down our spirits at dinner, even though the evening had been nice and we had enjoyed dancing a bit to slow songs. When we heard the news, we huddled together. I met Tara and Kevin, William's kids, for the first time when I stayed at their house for a couple of days. I got the guest room. Kevin seemed impressed when I told him I was his dad's bodyguard, while Tara was too busy texting her friends to care much about her father's safety. Kids can be like that. Kevin was 11 and Tara was 14, which seemed normal for their ages. They respected their dad and managed the situation with their parents' separation pretty well. William told them that their mom would not be around for a while and that he was unsure when she would come home. He kept it simple and chose not to say anything negative about their mother in front of them. He showed great character. The next day, the DNA test results arrived. Maggie, Shelley, Tabby, and I were all there as William opened the envelope. There was a lot of tension. William held the envelope in his hands, staring at it as if time had stopped. He looked at each of us, then carefully tore it open. He took out the paper and unfolded it, his face staying calm as he read through it twice. I hoped for good news, but prepared for something different. The tension grew as he read it a third time. Nobody spoke. It felt like we were all holding our breath while he read it again. His face didn't show anything, and I started to fear the worst. Finally, he looked up and smiled. "They're mine. Both of my kids are mine." Maggie squealed with joy. Shelley laughed to break the tension, while Tabby and I breathed a sigh of relief and joined in the laughter. "Congratulations," Maggie and Shelley said together. They hugged William, and then Tabby stepped in for a hug too. I shook his hand and pulled him in for a supportive hug. "I'm really happy for you," I said genuinely. "Yes, definitely. So glad. Thank you all. I needed to know for sure, especially after our talk," he said, his relief clear in his voice. "Don't worry, William. I will need to make a copy of that for the custody part of the divorce process. I wouldn't be surprised if your wife questions your role as a father," Maggie suggested. "Of course," he replied, handing the document to Maggie with a smile. "At least now she can't say you're not the father." "I want to be honest with you, William. In divorce cases, mothers usually get to keep the kids no matter what happened during the marriage. This includes times when the husband has not been faithful, among other reasons," Maggie explained. "No, that's not fair. I want to have the kids full-time. If I don't, it's clear she plans to take them from me," William said firmly. Maggie nodded. "I get where you're coming from, and her recorded statement should really help your case. But it will depend on the judge. Before we talk about custody, I'll suggest that Candace has supervised visits. It's a peace offering, but she won't be alone with the kids. I've also filed to make the protective orders against Gordon Smith permanent because of his past behavior." "Maggie," I said, "protection orders are useful, but as I've said before, they're only pieces of paper. If our idea about Gordon getting help is right, he might not even need to come close to be a threat," she replied. "Isn't that why you're here?" she asked with a knowing smile. "For now, yes. Having this item should make you feel a bit safer, and there are only 24 hours left before it can be picked up." William spoke up. "So do I have to keep worrying about Gordon?" "Not ideally, no. But Gordon has a history of holding grudges," I said. "I'm sharing the worst-case scenario here. If he wants to get back at you, you'll need to be ready to protect yourself. If you want, I can help you practice. You've mentioned you have some experience, so hopefully that will help. It's very different facing real threats compared to practicing." "I'm not a fighter," he replied, shaking his head. "I'm not saying you should fight anyone, William. You just need to be ready to defend yourself and your family. I'll be moving out tomorrow, so it'll be up to you to keep everyone safe while I'm not around." He listened carefully. "What's it like?" he asked quietly. "You know, taking a life." I thought for a moment and then decided to be truthful. "It's different for each person. Some react in ways that surprise you. For me, the first time was really overwhelming. Captain Drake once said something that helped me. He said, 'They aren't human, they are the enemy.' This idea helped me deal with my feelings. You know Gordon Smith, which makes things tougher. I hope it doesn't come to that, but if it does, he would be the one you'd face." While I spoke, Tabby held my hand, giving me silent support. I squeezed her hand in thanks. William was thinking over what I said and finally looked up with determination. "Then he is the enemy, and I will do what I must to keep my children and myself safe." "Good man," I said, nodding in respect. When a person, even someone like William, feels that their family is at risk, they can find a lot of strength to protect them. Candace and Gordon were now a clear threat, and I understood that such dangers could drive them to make risky decisions. We didn't have proof that he had hired someone to hurt his past rival, but we couldn't assume anything. Tabby had told me that he was unstable, and it had been getting worse over the last few years since he hired her as his lawyer. The meeting ended when the kids came home from school. Kevin was now my friend, thinking I was cool because I had been a soldier. Tara was starting to warm up to me, too. I informed them that I would only stay one more night, but I would be just a call away and would come back when I could until things were settled. They took the news well. Then William spoke to his children about why their mother and father were no longer living together. Tara and Kevin were both surprised, but Kevin then said something that shocked everyone. "Is that the guy who was causing trouble for Mommy a few weeks ago?" he asked. This caught everyone's attention, filling the room with a sense of shock. "Kev, what do you mean by trouble?" William asked, trying to understand his son's comment. "I saw them here, and I know I was supposed to be at school. I wasn't feeling well, and when the school nurse couldn't reach Mom, I walked home. When I got here, he was with Mommy, and she looked really upset. I was so scared I ran back to school." When Kevin finished speaking, William looked troubled, thinking about how to respond. "Son, did you see the man's face clearly?" "Yes, but I was scared. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have told you before, but when I came home later and saw Mommy was fine, I thought I had just imagined it," Kevin said. "It's all right, son. That was the day your mother said you were unwell and already in bed by the time I got home, right?" William asked. Kevin nodded. Tara stood there in disbelief as her little brother shared what had happened that day. She then accused him of making it up. "No, sweetie, he isn't making things up," William reassured his daughter. When she heard that, she turned pale and quickly ran to her room. "I'll go talk to her," Shelley offered. She went after Tara to help her understand everything. The situation had just changed completely. Maggie turned out to be really good with kids, just like Shelley. Maggie gently asked Kevin questions and took notes on what he remembered from that day. As she finished the conversation, Shelley and Tara returned to the living room. Tara smiled and hugged her father tightly. "I'm so sorry, Daddy," she cried. "I had no idea that Mom was like that." She then turned to her brother. "I'm sorry I said you were lying." I chuckled a bit at that. Siblings always have their squabbles while growing up. It's part of being a family. Even with apologies, there's often a little teasing. It reminded me of my childhood with Kara, and I couldn't help but smile at that memory. "It's okay, sweetie, but try not to call your brother names," William said firmly while hugging his daughter. "Sorry," she mumbled. Then she hugged her brother, and they shared a brief moment of sibling love. Family ties can be strong, and you love each other, even when things get tough. Things started to happen quickly after that. With the new testimony from Kevin about what his mother had been doing, along with identifying her in a photo lineup, the judge, Judge Reinhold, ruled in favor of William for primary custody, at least until the final decisions were made. It seemed the judge understood, being a father himself. However, this was just the early decision. The final custody choice was still to be worked out. It depended on how the rest of the case unfolded. Maggie argued to the judge about how Mrs. Turner had shown disrespect not only toward her husband, but also to her children. She had put her kids at risk by being unavailable when there were urgent issues. After all, she should have been their main contact for emergencies, like when they got sick at school. From my spot with William, I noticed Candace's face. First, she looked shocked, then deeply ashamed as she realized her son had seen her actions. On the other hand, Gordon, sitting next to her, appeared smug. He thought he could avoid the consequences. His new lawyer was aggressive, and unlike Tabby and the girls, seemed to have no worries about ethics. In court that day, our team only included Maggie and me. Tabby had to get a protective order against Gordon because he had made some creepy calls while we were out together. She had put him on speakerphone, letting me hear as he made vague threats. Finally, she told him she wasn't scared and hung up. Then she blocked his number and told Maggie and Shelley to do the same. When she explained what he had done, with her phone recording the calls and my testimony supporting her, the judge was glad to grant long-term protective orders and no contact against him. As we left the courtroom, I took Tabby's hand. "Sweetheart, why not stay at my place for a while?" "Do you think he will come after me at my place?" she asked. "Well, that, and I feel like we've taken things slow enough. If you don't mind, I'd like to move things along a bit," I smiled. "I like that idea. I've been wanting to spend more time with you since the night you helped me out of that tricky situation. We had been dating for almost 2 months, ever since the day I had to deal with Gordy. Great. We can stop at your place first. You can grab some clothes and other things you need, I said, smiling even wider. With the money William was giving me for my services, I was doing well. He had already handed me $100,000, saying it was for saving him once, and that he hoped I would help again if needed. The situation with the ex-wife had been mostly kept away from us, communicating only through lawyers. Even with Candace and her lawyer fighting hard, the divorce was still moving along, though slower than we hoped. As we drove to her place, I thought about what had happened since the first court hearing. Candace and Gordon had settled on some charges, getting community service for the lesser ones. Thanks to Gordy's expensive lawyer, he got the minimum sentence. We also found out that Gordy was backing Candace's lawyer. Trust fund kids can be quite interesting, not in a good way. For some reason, Candace still wanted to stay married to William. Her lawyer was pushing for marriage counseling, but Maggie was against it, saying William didn't want or need it. Judge Reinhold agreed, even saying, "If my wife treated me like that, I wouldn't want to go through counseling either." By the time we reached Tabby's apartment, the excitement between us was clear. We went inside so she could pack a suitcase and an overnight bag. I intended to help, but once we got into her bedroom, she turned to me and embraced me warmly. It felt like a special moment between us. As we stood there, we seemed to connect even more, feeling close to each other. I leaned in and shared a kiss, and I could feel the connection between us strengthening. Her reaction was exciting, and it was clear she was happy. I felt energized by the bond we had, and the warmth of the moment was uplifting. My breaths became quicker as we moved faster. I could sense her excitement growing, and her energy encouraged me even more. I didn't fully understand it, but the thrill of being close intensified everything, and I responded wholeheartedly. "Oh my goodness!" she exclaimed as we finally paused, still in each other's arms, feeling the warmth between us. We were slightly sweaty, and I looked at her smiling face as we lay next to each other. She gently stroked my face, and I leaned in for a soft kiss. Words weren't needed. Our actions spoke for us in that moment. "Why don't you move in here?" she suggested after we took another shower together and got ready for the evening. She was finishing up an overnight bag for her stay. "I will if you really want me to," I smiled. I live closer to William, so it would be easier to get to his place from mine if needed. Practical. I like that. She grinned and gave me a quick kiss. "Let's save that for later. Otherwise, we might not make it to my place tonight." I chuckled as we pulled away. "Fair enough, but once we get there," she said playfully, leaving the rest to my imagination. I smiled as we finished packing and carried everything to her car. After she followed me back to my place, I received a call from William. "Hey, William, what's going on?" I answered. "Someone is here," he said urgently. "I have my kids with me, and I already called for help." "Where are you in the house?" I asked. "In my bedroom. The door is locked, and I'm ready." "Good. Stay there, and I'll be there as soon as I can." Tabby's eyes widened with concern. I ended the call and looked at her. "I have to go." "Be careful," she said. With a quick goodbye, I dashed out the door, jumped into my car, and drove fast to William's place. I actually arrived before the police did. There was a big SUV parked in front, and I couldn't help but scoff a little when I saw it. As I got closer to the house, I heard loud sounds from inside. We had talked about this kind of situation, and I really hoped that William and the kids were safe. I decided to try a different approach and knocked on the door. When I did, everything went quiet inside, and I heard footsteps coming closer. I noticed the peephole go dark as I stood to the side, trying not to be seen. Someone was looking through it. I rang the doorbell to let them know I was still there. Then I heard voices inside. "Who is it?" "Don't know." "Cops?" "Nah." The police announced their presence. "Some kid might have been playing a prank," one person said. "Yeah, that sounds likely," the other replied. "There were only 2 of them. That wasn't good for the situation." "Let's find the man and the kids and finish what we came to do," one said. "He's probably in the main bedroom." "The kids are likely with him," the other responded. The footsteps moved away from the door. I pressed the doorbell again, hoping for a response. "What's happening?" came a frustrated voice after I rang the bell several more times. Then I saw the flashing lights and heard the sirens. I quietly moved to the back of the house. When I got there, I noticed that the glass on the sliding door had been broken. 2 men were inside, which wasn't good. I could see through the patio door that the inside of the house was a mess. They had been tearing things up. William was inside with a backup plan. He followed what I taught him. I noticed him behind the bed, kneeling and holding the pistol steady. The children were safe in the large bathtub in the bathroom, out of harm's way. Suddenly, I heard banging on the front door. "Police! Open up! It's the police! We need to go!" The 2 men rushed out the back door. I quickly stood in the way of one of them while the other jumped the fence and ran off. The man I stopped looked a bit confused, so I swiftly took the item from his belt. Then I moved him to a place where the police wouldn't see us. "Who are you working for?" I asked quietly. "If I say, he'll come after me," he replied, looking scared. "Think carefully. I'm in charge here. Are you going to tell me or not?" I urged. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Gordon Smith hired me." I figured as much. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll tell the police the truth about your boss, and you won't mention me. You just tripped, and that's how you ended up like this. And as for Smith, he should worry about me. I'm not someone to take lightly." I quickly used a simple move to keep him down for a moment before placing the item in his hand. As the police entered the house, I quietly slipped out the side gate and headed back to my car. I watched for a while. When the ambulance arrived, they wheeled him out on a stretcher, his wrists secured. He was awake and talking to a detective. I gave a small, grim smile. Smith's situation was about to get more complicated. When I got back to my apartment, my phone rang, showing William's number. "Hey, boss," I said. "I take it you had something to do with the person who got caught?" he said, sounding amused. "I can't confirm or deny that, boss," I replied lightly, making him laugh. "Well, he admitted who he worked for, and I think you can guess who that is." "I'm guessing Smith," I said, smiling as I reached my apartment door. "Good guess, but I have a feeling you already knew that." I enjoyed getting him to talk and handling things quickly. I wonder how long his partner realized he was left behind. The police caught him too. Once they saw the vehicle outside, they waited for him to come back and arrested him right as he stepped inside. He had an unregistered weapon. The police are still looking into it, so I have to go. "I understand. And please don't tell anyone I was there," I said, though it seemed unnecessary. "Give me some credit, Deck," he replied. "I'll talk to you later." "Okay, see you later, boss," I said quietly, laughing as I opened my apartment door and was nearly startled by someone coming in. "Are you okay? You weren't hurt, right?" she asked quickly. "I'm fine," I replied with a smile. "The police caught the 2 people who broke into William's house, and I've confirmed that Gordy is using outside help." "I knew it," she said, shaking her head. "We were right," I confirmed, nodding. Now we just had to wait for the police to take Gordy into custody. Unfortunately, that didn't go as planned. Gordy must have gotten a warning somehow and disappeared before the police could catch him. He vanished completely, almost as if he had never been there except for the alerts and warrants out for him. Left or right, he was clever. Even with the alerts and his name and picture everywhere in the news, Gordy Smith had managed to escape so completely that when the police raided his Beverly Hills home, he was already gone. If I had to guess, he was probably tipped off. He likely found out that the operation against Turner had been compromised and started to pack his things as soon as he heard that his partners had been caught. It had all been in the news, connected to him. One of the officers must have leaked the information that those people had been working for Gordy. The LAPD has faced a lot of problems in the past, as you might remember. But compared to those times, this was just a small issue for LAS police force. 2 weeks after that night, Gordy was still on the run. No one seemed to be able to find a 6'3", 230 pounds man who fit his description, even with his photo everywhere. The LAPD managed to freeze Gordy's bank accounts, which stopped him from taking out any more money. With his options running low, it was only a matter of time before they caught him. Tabby had some contacts in the LAPD, so she found out about their plans and where they thought he might be hiding. Most people believed he had gone to Mexico, where he could live off the cash he had taken out on the day of the failed raid at William's house. Candace, of course, claimed she had no idea the raid would happen and acted surprised when she heard about it. Her lawyer still believed they could win her half of William's fortune and some extra support money. Even though the judge wasn't as easygoing as they wanted, he still had to follow the law in California. He had some room to decide, but not as much as he might have hoped for. At least we managed to get Candace's parents to support us. When we played the recorded conversation for them and explained everything, her father, Jake Sumner, was very angry. Her mother, Melissa, just cried, shaking her head sadly at what her daughter had done. "We didn't raise her that way," Jake said, looking disappointed. "You have to believe me." We believed him because he and his wife seemed like truly kind people. They cared about William and thought of him like the son they never had. When Gordy lost money for Candace's lawyer, he started to use every trick he could think of to drag out the divorce, even attempting to get a different judge, one who might be nicer to his client. He asked Judge Reinhold 3 times to step down, but it didn't work. He even tried to accuse the judge of a conflict of interest to get him removed, but that failed too. The judge had dated Shelley briefly in college before he married his wife, so there was nothing wrong there. Since Shelley had no contact with him and wasn't even the lawyer for the divorce, the request to remove the judge had no real grounds. Maggie created a new asset division plan for Candace, and I must say, William was more generous than I would have been. When I asked him about it, he explained, "I just want her out of my life. I'm tired of court and her lawyer." I had to agree with him. In the end, Candace, against her lawyer's advice, accepted the deal William offered. She would have 2 hours of supervised visits every other weekend. When the tape was played for the judge in his office, he firmly decided not to let her be alone with the children she had threatened. Then, when Kevin spoke about what he saw that day, Candace turned pale and began to cry. It was the most real moment I had seen from her since I became involved in this situation. She was crying and saying sorry to her son, daughter, and even William. I think she finally understood how serious things had become. Phil would say this was just like her. The judge ordered her to receive $2,000 a month for support for 3 years, or until she remarried, whichever happened first. The judge did not require child support since William could take care of the children on his own. At the final hearing, Candace even apologized to William for the problems she had caused over the 1.5 years. I thought William would be surprised, but he accepted her apology kindly. He was definitely more forgiving than I would have been in that situation. Personally, I have little patience for dishonesty, and I dislike when someone tries to pressure another into an unfair situation. That was what Candace had done. William couldn't defend himself against her actions, so she used that and the fear of losing his children to push him into a difficult spot. In the end, he fought back in the only way he could. He hired me to help him with what he felt he couldn't handle. Now, he was able to stand up for himself. For someone who usually works with numbers, he had surprising skills in defending himself. Yes, we had gone to the shooting range together, and I was impressed by his ability to hit the target. I was truly surprised by his accuracy, and so it went, as the final divorce ruling marked William's release from a hard marriage. Maybe that sounds harsh. She did show some emotion in the end. William gave me a final check for $50,000 plus a case of beer. Did I mention I appreciated my former boss? He's a good guy. Gordon was still on the run, but without his money, it was just a matter of time before the police found him. Then again, this is the LAPD we're talking about. Tabby and I were sitting with Maggie and Shelley. William and his kids were across from us in his living room. William had tried to get Tabby to be his new lawyer, but she said no. She had other plans, but Shelley would be just as good. This surprised her partners and me, too. I was just as shocked as everyone else. Tabby leaned over to me after she announced it and whispered in my ear, "We'll talk about it later. I want to discuss it with you before I tell them." "Tell them what?" I whispered back. "Later," she replied with a knowing smile. Now I was curious about what it could be. "Anyway," she continued, turning to our friends, "we need to get going. Deck and I have a lot to talk about." She was smiling as she said it, but now I was worried. She turned down an exciting offer to be William Turner's main lawyer and wanted to speak with me before telling our friends. "We understand," Shelley said, giving us both hugs. "Just let us know what's going on, okay?" "I will. I promise," Tabby replied, hugging William and Maggie as well. When Maggie hugged me, she whispered, "If Tabby wasn't my friend, I would go for you right away." "Sorry, I'm in love with her, so I'm not available," I whispered back. "Good to know," she said playfully. "Hey, enough of that." "He's mine," Tabby laughed. "Just checking." Maggie winked at Tabby with a smile. "Okay, we need to go. See you all later," Tabby said, rolling her eyes. With that, we left and drove to my place. I had convinced Tabby to move in with me since my place was bigger. Naturally, she wanted to redecorate, and honestly, she has great taste, so I didn't mind. She cleaned my apartment, and I had to admit it looked and smelled much better after she did. I added her to the lease, and she's paying half the rent now. "Okay, so what do we need to discuss, sweetheart?" I asked as we drove. "When we get home, trust me, it's nothing bad." "I trust you." "I'm just curious," I smiled. It was true. I trusted her more than anyone else in my life, besides my aunt, uncle, and cousin. We were planning a trip to Santa Barbara in a few months to visit them and introduce everyone. When Aunt Naomi asked about if I had a girlfriend, I mentioned that I was seeing someone special and we were moving in together. She insisted on meeting her, and I agreed. When I told Tabby, she happily said she would love to meet my family. Sadly, she had a lot of work on her plate and couldn't take time off until a bit later. When we got inside the apartment, I looked her in the eyes. "Okay, tell me, what did you want to talk about?" "A business idea," she said playfully. "What you did for William is something we could promote." "What do you mean? Being a bodyguard?" "I've done that before," I chuckled. "Bodyguards don't do what you did for him. They keep him safe, but you taught him how to protect himself and his family. You went beyond what most would do. He kept calling you his equalizer." "I like that, and it shows you know your stuff." I laughed at that. If it hadn't taken so long to get a plan that actually worked, it would have been easier at first. "You couldn't have known what Gordon would do. You adapted in every situation and came out on top." "That's true," I shrugged. "So here's my idea. We market you as the equalizer, kind of a bodyguard, private investigator with added services." "That sounds like I'd also be a hired helper," I joked. She replied with a thoughtful look. "Okay, how about a bodyguard who does more than just the basics?" "We can figure that out later," I laughed. I liked the idea, though. The closeness between us grew slowly and surely. Our eyes met, and we shared everything we had. That morning was filled with gentle warmth, and when we touched, it felt like one long wave of comfort and understanding. There were no loud sounds, just soft expressions of happiness as we enjoyed our moment together. As we held each other, I noticed how much she valued our connection. It seemed to make our bond even stronger. My past was different. With my ex-wife, we had our ways, while with others, I had taken precautions. But with Tabby, I felt a trust I had not known before. She had shared her health background with me, which made me feel more at ease. The first time Tabby told me she loved me was after we watched a movie at her place. I answered with all my heart, realizing how special it was. When we had free time, we talked about many things. Though her views were more open than mine, it never caused any serious problems. We often discussed our opinions and found ways to respect each other's thoughts. I learned that she was also Catholic, but we both practiced it lightly. We went to Mass once a month and took part in confession and communion together. That morning, we had more to talk about than just religion and politics. "Okay, what ideas do you have for our new business?" I asked with a smile after we had gotten ready. "At first, I want you to help out at the firm with our clients. You know Maggie, who handles divorces. She could really use your help with tougher cases like the one with William and Candace. Shelley helps her, but also works on personal injury cases alone. I plan to be more careful with client choices moving forward. So yes, it seems you'll have plenty to keep you busy. You'd get a third of the usual fees and basically work as a bodyguard and private investigator." "What do you think?" she suggested, making a strong case. I thought about what she said for a minute. "As long as I'm not asked to do anything wrong, I think it sounds good," I replied with a playful shrug. "What? You don't want to be the tough guy?" she teased with a warm smile. "You already know my thoughts on that," I said with a cheeky grin. I had done what I needed to do before, but it wasn't my favorite thing. "So?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I was definitely going to accept my girlfriend's job offer. "I'll do it," I said with a shrug and a smile. "Great!" she cheered, her face lighting up. We spent the rest of the morning at her office. She told Maggie and Shelley about my new role with the firm and how I would be there to help with any cases they needed. Life continued on. Tabby and I became even closer in the weeks that followed. William kept in touch, and we sometimes had meals at his home. We learned that Candace had moved away, staying with her sister in Santa Clarita. She was making progress with her supervised visits to see her children. She would visit every other weekend to try to rebuild their bond. At first, the kids were a bit distant, but over time they started to notice the changes she had made since Kevin's testimony had encouraged her to rethink her decisions. Though she would always be their mother, things would never be quite the same. As William shared this story, Tabby held my hand tightly, showing her strong beliefs and her commitment to those she cared about. Although we didn't talk about Gordon much, we knew he was still out there. His resources were fewer now, but he remained a concern. As time passed since this ordeal began, I learned more about him. He could be charming and was good at getting what he wanted. I spoke with Candace about how everything had happened. I wanted to understand how she got involved in a situation that led to such poor choices, including her connection with Gordon. She told me they met at a fundraiser where she went with William, something William confirmed. Before that, she had valued her relationship with him, but Gordon started to create doubt, suggesting that her husband didn't appreciate her like he should. This made her rethink her loyalty. It had started slowly. What began as friendly exchanges turned into something more when boundaries were blurred. She mentioned giving him her contact information to work together on charity events, which soon became flirty messages that William struggled to see. He stayed polite because of their parenting duties. Candace explained how it all started as light-hearted fun, but then took a turn for the serious. She confessed that Gordon got upset after he kissed her for the first time, and she pushed him away, telling him it was wrong. She said she loved William, and Gordon looked at her intensely. He quickly apologized and talked his way back into her good graces. But then he touched her again, and this time she gave in. He was just so charming that she found it hard to resist. After witnessing his close encounter with Tabby, I believed he could have acted the same way toward Candace if she hadn't stood her ground. After that first moment, things quickly spiraled out of control. 2 weeks later, Gordon came up with a plan to draw William into a situation that could weaken him. It didn't matter to Gordon if William noticed or not. For both Gordon and Candace, this became a struggle for power. Candace found a part of herself that felt both wrong and freeing. She had one limit: she wouldn't cross her children. While she thought about using her kids to her advantage against William, she refused to let Gordon meet them or shape how they saw their father. She stood firm on this, although Gordon kept pushing. Candace recognized that William was their dad, and Gordon was not. He continued to pressure her for a divorce, a path she had been thinking about when everything began to fall apart. That was when William decided to hire me, in case you forgot. Candace realized she had lost herself in the whole situation and much more. She had lost her husband and her children too. William would never take her back, no matter how hard she tried to make things right. The hurt she had caused him over the past year had taken away any feelings he had left for her. Kevin and Tara had lost respect for their mother, and while they were starting to build a friendly relationship again, it was unclear if they would ever fully trust and love her again after everything that had happened. William acted fast after Candace gave him her first ultimatum. He spoke with top divorce lawyers in the state, who gave him similar advice. Unless she puts the children in danger and you have clear proof, or unless she gets into serious trouble, she will likely get full custody in the divorce. This led him to look for a private investigator to help him. Most investigators turned him down because of ethical worries, but one agreed to help gather proof of the affair, collecting both video and audio evidence of Candace and Gordon's relationship. When William showed Candace copies of the evidence, her response was sharp and strong. She warned him that if he sent those to her parents as he had suggested, he would lose access to his kids forever. Gordon had threatened him, making the situation even more serious. William felt cornered but refused to give up. He thought about getting more help, but ultimately chose not to. He didn't want to hurt anyone, no matter his feelings about Candace and Gordon. When Candace talked about her fall from grace, her tears were real. She truly regretted her choices during this time and was now in counseling. However, William had made it clear he wouldn't change his mind about their relationship, just when it seemed like things were settling down. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, important things began to happen. Candace was not part of this. She genuinely regretted her past actions. This time, the problem started with Gordon Smith. I had begun helping with cases at the firm, mostly working with Maggie. Divorce cases usually involve a lot of tension. My first case with her was fairly simple, collecting proof of a spouse's cheating, which was easy to do. The next case required me to travel to Ventura because the person involved had a partner there, which kept me away from Tabby for a few days. I had just talked to Tabby and told her that I had all the needed details about the situation and was ready to return to LA. She mentioned she would inform Maggie. 20 minutes after we said goodbye, Maggie called me back. I answered using my Bluetooth earpiece. "I assume Tabby told you everything?" I chuckled. "We have solid proof against him." "David, you need to come back as soon as you can," she replied, sounding very upset. Her voice hinted at worry, and I felt a tightness in my stomach. "What happened?" "Is Tabby okay?" I asked, trying to keep calm despite my anxiety. "I hope so. She and Shelley were confronted in the parking lot after they left, and as soon as I heard, I called for help. They are both in the hospital and not doing well. I'm here too, so please come directly when you return." She struggled to hold back her emotions. "Did you see who did this?" I asked, though I had a strong feeling I knew the answer. "I think I might know, but I'm not sure. He wore a hood, but he was a big guy. He threatened them with a baseball bat," she said angrily, fury taking over her tears. I was glad she was not angry at me. "Gordon," I said coldly. It was not a question. He was a large man, and he had plenty of reasons to act. I wished I had taken more steps to protect them. I had always worried he might try something against Tabby, William, or even me. But he probably thought I could defend myself, so he targeted those he thought were weaker. His frozen accounts meant he couldn't hire anyone to help him. "That wouldn't surprise me. He has crossed the line this time," she almost shouted. "I agree. I'm on my way, Maggie. Which hospital are you at?" "Mercy, and I'm in the ICU waiting area. They were hurt pretty badly, Deck." "Okay, I'll be there in about half an hour," I said. "After I check in, I'll go to the office and look at the security footage." Yes, that was one step that might help. I had convinced Tabby to install security cameras in the parking lot of their law firm, and I hoped it would be useful. "Good idea. Just please hurry. They just took Shelley into surgery." "I'll get there as soon as I can," I promised. "See you soon." Ending the call, I stepped on the gas. The engine roared as my speedometer reached 100 miles per hour and kept rising. I arrived in just under half an hour. I was lucky. The California Highway Patrol wasn't out looking for speeding cars. I hadn't seen any police at all during the drive. When I got there, Maggie met me in the waiting room of the ICU and quickly hugged me. "Deck, Tabby is in room 207, but Shelley is still in surgery. She suffered some serious head injuries." "That's not good," I said with a worried look. "Will she be okay?" "I hope so," she answered, matching my concern. "And what about Tabby? Is she all right?" I asked, trying to sound hopeful. "She's hurt but stable. Her ribs are bruised, but the attacker only got one hit in before Shelley stepped in." "Thank goodness for Shelley," I said softly. "I need to see Tabby. Room 207, right?" "Yes. Last time I checked, she was sleeping." "Thanks, Maggie. I'll go see her. Then I need to look over the security footage at the office. I want to see it myself." "I understand, Deck." With that, I went up to the second floor and quickly found room 207. The door was open and Tabby was awake, looking out the window. "Hey, beautiful. I got here as fast as I could," I said as she turned to face me. A smile broke through her tears, and I crossed the room to sit on the edge of her bed and wrap her in my arms. Her arms came around my neck and we held each other tightly. "I'm so glad you're here," she cried softly into my shoulder. "I wish I could have been there to protect you," I said, feeling both love and regret for not being closer. "Don't think about that," she said gently. I held her closer, stroking her hair and resting my chin on her head. She clung to me. What happened? I spoke to Maggie, but she didn't see everything. Tabby took a moment to gather herself, but kept holding on. After a deep, shaky breath, she began to tell her story. Well, Shelley and I were leaving work, planning to go to a bar for some drinks. We were going to call you and Maggie when we chose a place, but it never happened. I was unlocking my car when Shelley yelled, and then I felt a blow to my ribs. It hurt so much. She started crying again, and I simply held her tighter. After a moment, she calmed down and continued. After he hit me a couple of times, Shelley came to help. She swung her purse at him, and you know how heavy that thing is. She chuckled a little despite the pain. Yeah, I can imagine, I smiled sadly, kissing her on the forehead. Keep going. So he stopped hitting me and turned toward her. I was getting up and yelling when Maggie came running out with her phone to call for help. When the attacker saw her, he ran away and jumped on a motorcycle. Then he drove away quickly. Did you see his face? I asked softly. I felt her shake her head against my chest. No, but I think I know who it was. He didn't say anything, just made some noises when Shelley hit him. It was terrible. She started crying again, and I held her close to comfort her. After she calmed down, I pulled back a little and looked into her dark brown eyes. I need to check the security footage from the firm. I'll be back as soon as I find out anything, okay? She sniffled. Okay. I love you, and please be careful. If it's him, don't go too far. I remembered my promise to her. I promise to be careful, I said with a small smile. You just rest and feel better. I love you, Tabby. Love you too, she replied with a kind smile. When I checked the DVD at the firm, I couldn't see the attacker's face under the hood. If anyone had seen his face, it must be Shelley, but last I heard she was still in surgery. However, when he jumped on the motorcycle to leave, a Suzuki Samurai, I managed to pause the video and get the license plate number. I checked online and found it registered to a Greg Jones with an address. An alias? That seemed likely. Just to confirm, I called Maggie. Hey, Deck. Tabby told me you've been looking at the DVR at the firm. Did you find anything? She asked when she picked up. Actually, yes. Did you, Shelley, or Tabby ever work on a case with a guy named Greg Jones? Not that I know of. I'll ask Tabby in a bit. I'm outside right now. I know it's not the best place to be, but I'm really scared and stressed out. I'm not judging, Maggie, I said. Talk to Tabby and I'll call you back in an hour or two, okay? Okay, what are you going to do? She asked, a bit worried. I'm going to confront him. With that, I ended the call and turned off my phone. At that moment, I didn't care if it was Gordy or not. He had brought this trouble on himself. I decided to leave my Camaro at home for this. Instead, I took my '71 Harley Sportster and rode over to the man's home. When I got to the condo, I noticed the bright blue Suzuki Samurai parked in front. He must be home. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and walked up to the door. I rang the bell, making sure my helmet visor was down so he couldn't see my face. Who is it? He called from inside. I spoke louder. I was wondering how much you'd sell that Samurai for. It's not for sale, he shouted back. He didn't open the door and didn't seem like he would. I'll give you 10 grand for it, I said, trying to change my voice to keep it hidden. I always liked that model, but they stopped making it. There was a brief silence. Then I heard, okay, let's talk. The man opened the door for me. As he unlocked it, I quickly stepped inside. I faced him directly. He stumbled back into his seat and I kicked the door closed behind me. I remained quiet, my face hidden behind my helmet. Hey, it wasn't me. Whatever you think happened, it wasn't me, he said hurriedly. He was still wearing the red hoodie Maggie mentioned, but now the hood was down. I noticed a bruise on his cheek, likely from when Shelley had hit him before. Without wasting time, I made sure he couldn't react. He seemed surprised by my sudden move. I kept him awake while I spoke, wanting to drive my point home. He tried to defend himself, but that only made me more determined. When I was done, he lay there, dazed and unsteady. I still hadn't spoken since entering. I leaned in closer, bringing my face near his, though his swollen eyes couldn't see me. When I realized he was barely aware, I stepped away. Gordy no longer looked like the same person I had seen when I arrived. I took one last look at him on the floor, then turned to leave. People like Gordon Smith only understand one thing: a direct approach. I felt it was important to show him the reality of his actions in a way he wouldn't forget. This was more than just a lesson, but honestly, I felt a strange satisfaction from it. I stopped at a corner store to buy a throwaway phone and used it to call 911, letting them know that Gordon was alive but in bad shape. After giving them his address, I hung up, crushed the phone, and removed the memory card. I threw the phone in the dumpster behind the store. Next, I parked my motorcycle where I could see what was happening as the police and emergency workers arrived. When I turned my own phone back on, I saw I had 20 messages from Maggie and just as many from Tabby. I think I might be in trouble, I said to myself with a grin as I called Tabby first. "Are you okay?" she asked, clearly worried. "I'm fine," I replied calmly, watching the authorities at Gordon's place. "I found out where he was living under a fake name and called the police. They just got here." "Uh-huh. What else aren't you telling me?" she said, sensing there was more. "Well, I might have made sure Gordon was handled before the police came," I said lightly. "I kept my promise. He'll be okay." "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "Please tell me he can't recognize you." "Nope. I had my helmet on with the dark visor down during the whole thing." She chuckled, then quickly caught her breath. "Don't make me laugh, please." "Sorry about that," I said, feeling a bit awkward. "I'll be there soon. But first, I need to change out of these clothes." "I get it. Just hurry up and come, okay?" "I will. I care about you." "I care about you, too." After we hung up, I rode my bike back to my apartment to change. I could still see signs from the earlier event on my boots and jeans. Once I burned the old clothes and put on a clean outfit, I hopped into my Camaro and drove back to the hospital. When I got there, I sat with Tabby and Maggie in Tabby's room, waiting for news about Shelley. The air was heavy with worry. Tabby held my hand tightly while Maggie sat next to me, quietly praying for Shelley. Finally, 4 hours after the surgery started, the doctor came in to update us. Since Shelley's family had passed away, Maggie and Tabby were listed as her next of kin, meaning they were recognized as her closest family even though they weren't related by blood. "Maggie? Tabby?" he asked. When they nodded, he continued, "Shelley is out of surgery and recovering now. She has a serious concussion and some swelling in her brain from the attack. Her skull was fractured too, but we were able to reduce the swelling and stabilize her. She is in a medically induced coma to help her heal. We will need to keep her in the hospital for a while." He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts before looking back at us. "It's still too early to know everything, but we'll keep a close eye on her. I wish I had better news, but she is alive and hopefully recovering." "Thank you, Doctor," Maggie said, tears in her eyes. He nodded and gave us a reassuring smile before leaving the room. Once he was gone, Maggie looked at me with a strong determination. "I hope he can't hurt anyone else." "He won't for a long time, if ever," I replied. "Good. But if she doesn't recover, I'll make sure he faces consequences," she said firmly. "I'll be right there with you," Tabby added. I sensed they wouldn't have minded if I acted on my darker instincts, even though I had promised not to. "And all this after you made me promise to stay calm," I said lightly to Tabby. "Well, she's our sister, and we might change our minds," Tabby said with a smile, easing the tension in the room just as Maggie and I shared a small laugh. "Oh, and if the authorities come looking for you, Deck, just remember you were with us all day. We talked about things while you were away earlier. They are aware of the troubles with him from what happened at William's place. We'll cover for you if you need it," Maggie said with a smile. "Thanks, Maggie," I replied. "And thank you, Tabby," I added, giving her a friendly smile. "Any time," Tabby responded kindly. We kept the conversation light for a while. Tabby was still on pain medication for her ribs. She had some bruises and a couple of small cracks. It would take time before she felt comfortable moving around again. Visiting hours ended not long after, so Maggie and I had to leave. The doctor came in and said that Tabby could go home tomorrow. I made sure to say I would pick her up in the morning. That night when I got home, I found the police waiting for me, specifically 2 detectives from the LAPD. "Mr. Shepard?" asked the first detective, who looked quite heavy. "That's me. What can I help you with?" I asked, staying calm. "I'm Detective Rogers, and this is Detective Hightower. We'd like to ask you a few questions downtown." "I prefer to talk here," I replied evenly. "What is this about?" They exchanged glances, and then Rogers said, "Okay. May we come in?" "No, let's talk right here. You still haven't explained what this is about." "An anonymous tip earlier today led us to Gordon Smith," he said. "That's good. He tried to cause trouble for my old boss," I said with a nod and a slight smile. "Well, when he was found, he had been harmed. Do you know anything about that?" "I can't say I do, but if you find out who did it, let me know so I can thank them," I said casually. "Mr. Shepard, could you come with us to the station for a more detailed discussion?" Rogers asked. "Am I being arrested?" I raised an eyebrow. "Can you tell us where you were from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. tonight?" he asked. "I was at the hospital with my girlfriend and her business partner." My partner and someone else were in a tough spot at their law firm's parking lot, so that's where I was after returning from Ventura around 6 p.m. I spoke calmly. "Talk to Maggie or Tabitha. They can confirm my story." "We'll do that, Mr. Shepard," the detective said. He then reminded me not to leave town. "I wouldn't dream of it, officer," I replied with a smile. Maggie and Tabby stuck to their word. They confirmed my whereabouts during the hour I was away from the hospital. After that, it seemed the police lost interest, as Gordon already had a bad reputation. From what I heard through Tabby and her contacts in the LAPD, many didn't care much about who had harmed him. What mattered was that he was now in custody. That was fine with us. The morning after the incident, I went to the hospital to pick up Tabby. She was moving a bit slowly because of her sore ribs, but she seemed to be in a good mood. It took 2 more weeks for Shelley to wake up from her coma. Thankfully, she didn't remember much, but she did recall the person in the hood, which was enough for the police to charge Gordon Smith with attempted murder and assault with a dangerous weapon, 2 counts each. Along with his earlier charge of hiring others to commit murder, it meant that Gordon would be in prison for a long time. The district attorney obtained the surveillance video. With Shelley's statement and the fact that Gordon was still wearing the red hoodie when the police took him away, the evidence was strong against him. Not even his expensive lawyer could help him. During his trial for hiring others, his associates testified against him after making deals for shorter sentences. In the end, Gordon was sentenced to 25 years to life in Folsom Prison. Shelley was slowly recovering, and Tabby, Maggie, and I supported her during this time. When she finally asked us to give her some space to heal, we told her to reach out if she needed any help. She said it with a smile, but we could tell she wanted some independence too. "So what should we do next week? All my cases are finished, and Maggie mentioned that Shelley needs help with hers too." It had been 6 months since the incident with Gordon, and life was getting back to normal at home and work. We tried to spend time together whenever we could since we were all busy. After working on different cases for those 6 months, it seemed like we would finally have some time to relax together. "How about you come with me to Santa Barbara to meet my family?" I suggested with a smile. We had planned to do that before everything got hectic. Tabby smiled and got comfortable on my lap. "I think I would like that. I love my girlfriend."